Hi, my name is Phil Anderson, and I'm running for United States Senate to represent Wisconsin. A big item in the news lately is the Supreme Court, namely that the Supreme Court Justice, Antonin Scalia, has passed away, and President Obama is exercising his constitutional authority to appoint a replacement. Now that would be all well and good except for the fact that once a justice is placed on the bench, the Supreme Court, it's a lifetime appointment. So they stay there forever. And we have a warped sense of what the Supreme Court's role is. It was not originally intended to hear any case that it chose to dive into all kinds of areas of law, laws that the Congress passed or that state legislatures passed, and to basically decide what this is constitutional, this is not constitutional, and issue broad interpretations of what the Constitution means or what they think it should mean, and thereby effectively legislate from the bench. That's been the situation for the last 212 years. And I say 212 years because in 1804, the court decided a case called Marbury versus Madison and basically expanded their original jurisdiction to include all these things, which they now use to basically legislate from the bench. The original intent in the Constitution was that the Supreme Court wouldn't decide whether every single law is constitutional or not, but only specific cases, and that is states suing each other, or suing the federal government, or individuals suing the federal government, certain restricted things that it made sense at that point because the original intent of the Constitution was that the people should rule in a limited fashion each other through their representatives in a Republican government. But once the court expanded its jurisdiction in 1804, now basically anything that they decide to hear, any decision, any case that goes that far, they can decide to hear it or decide not to hear it, and thereby really affect our lives in a way that was never intended, especially for 9 people who are not elected. So as your senator in Washington, I'm going to do something about this. I am going to fight for the United States Congress to pass a law that returns the role of the Supreme Court to its original jurisdiction, basically writing a law that's contrary to Marbury versus Madison. And if they're honest justices, they'll have to look at the long body of precedent there, but they'll also have to look to the Constitution and say what was really the founders' intent. Now, they may strike it down as being unconstitutional because they want to keep their power. But what I'd hope they would do is understand that a truly free country needs to be primarily run in those ways that the Constitution allows, but through representatives, through the Congress, through the legislative branch, and those laws executed by the executive branch, and have a limited jurisdiction of the judicial branch and not the mess that we have now. If they recognize that, then we can hold our legislators responsible for things like Roe v. Wade, abortion laws, interstate commerce laws, all kinds of other things that the court has taken over and have basically taken away the responsibility for the Congress to act on them. And when Congress people shrug their shoulders and say, well, the Supreme Court has decided this is constitutional, not constitutional, then they don't have to take on the awesome responsibility of actually representing their constituents and their constituents' feelings and opinions on these things. They just shrug their shoulders and say, well, I can't do anything about it. The Supreme Court has decided. That's not the way it was intended. That's not the way that people's freedoms and liberties are most expressed through the legislative process, and we need to get back to that. That is my opinion. I've never seen a libertarian article or position written on it quite like that, but I believe that if we're going to consent to be ruled, that we consent to being represented in Congress, but we don't consent when our representatives appoint Supreme Court justices who then serve their entire rest of their life on the bench. I think that's wrong. I'm going to fight to change it. So thanks, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.